Hello everyone, welcome back to Racing Weekly, a podcast and YouTube show brought to you by Oddschecker in association with Bet365. I'm Rishi, joined by Steve Ryder, still sporting his lovely, it's getting better every week, the Movember tash. Donn Donn McClean.
Yeah, no moustache here.
No, but you bring a wealth of enjoyment from the weekend, Don. What a great weekend of racing it was in Ireland.
Yeah, it was a fantastic weekend racing, Rishi. And since they've done this, since they've moved the John Durkan chase back to join the Morgiana hurdle on that weekend at Punchestown, they did the same with Navan. They've put the Fortria chase and the Troytown chase on the same weekend, and then next weekend the Hatton's Grace hurdle. That's always been a two-day fixture at Ferriers. These 3 weekends, yeah, you're going to see most of the best national hunt horses in Ireland there.
Very good racing in Ireland, but also matched, I'd say, by what we saw on Saturday in the UK.
Yeah, you had a lot in the build-up to say, it's going to be depleted fields because you've got the Betfair Chase, the 1965 and a graduation chase all on the same weekend. But I thought it ended up being 3 really good races to watch and to analyse and to point towards the King George with all 3 winners, where it now appears to be a standalone race as opposed to when we normally review these races, it's all about the Cheltenham Festival, whereas I think I'm looking forward to the King George the most out of any race currently.
Well, should we have a very brief chat, given the juncture we're at in the season, because things are getting really serious about the Trainers' Championship, and obviously we'd be looking ahead to what is going to be another terrific weekend of racing. But as things stand, the Bet365 market for the National Hunt Trainers' Championship in the UK, Dan Skelton is 1-3, Willie Mullins 9-4, and then, Nicky Henderson's 20-1, Paul Nicholls 40s, etc. But it's a 2-horse race. One horse isn't even really near the starting stall.
No, it's incredible how the season is. Like it's a really interesting undercurrent to the whole season, isn't it? This matchup, because like Willie hasn't got out of the blocks yet in Britain. And Dan Skelton, he's a little bit ahead of where he was last season. He had 1.247 million last season at this stage, or at the end of November. He won 758,000 this month so far, which brings him to 1.45 million this season so far. Willie's got 5 grand. He's had 3 runners in Britain so far. And at the start of the season, you were kind of thinking, Willie, he might just start a little bit earlier in Britain because, of what he did last year, obviously. But no, he's sticking to his usual way. And as we were saying earlier on, he's going to run Neil Elliott Dayton in the Tingle Creek. He said that. Anzadam obviously in the Fighting Fifth, but that's a function of the 2-mile hurdlers that he has. But it's the latter part of the season. In March last year, Willie won 1.25 million. In April, he won 2.13. Obviously helped by the 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 in the Grand National. So, and no more than in Ireland, like Punchestown was always where Willie would go clear. And, when Gordon Elliott was challenging him, it was coming down to, how's the Punchestown Festival going to go? And there was one year Gordon got very close to him, but he just surged away at Punchestown. And it's the latter part of the season, like obviously March. And he did that last year without winning the Gold Cup or the Champion Hurdle or the Champion Chase. So he had 10 winners at Cheltenham, but they weren't the golden races. So it's fascinating, but it'll be interesting to see how Dan Skelton, by how much Dan Skelton will be ahead come that point, because he's going to be a long way ahead. But I'd say if you're thinking of backing Willie Mullins, don't back him yet, because he might, as the season goes on, and maybe if Anzadam wins on Saturday, that could maybe cause his price to contract. But I'd say his odds might be extended a little bit more as the season goes on.
He might well win the King George, which is something we'll talk about later on. But where do you stand with the way the comparisons are going between this season, last season, and who's going to emerge on top?
I do think it's fascinating. And Dan Skelton has always been renowned as a target trainer. He kind of built himself as targeting those 2-mile handicap hurdles, didn't he? Winning county hurdles and those sort of things. But now he just targets everything, from grade 1s to big valued handicaps. And he's had an unbelievable season so far. And I do also think that he is targeting them with horses early on, and then will back off and then bring them back in the spring. Whereas he was running horses at Ayr and Sandown that really needed to be out in the field, didn't they? And I think he's probably had that in the back of his mind as well, that he'll very much bookmark 1, 2, 3 runs throughout the season in order to get those big targets. Whereas last season he tried to build up this substantial lead and it didn't work. So he needs to do something different this year, and I think he will do it.
On that line of thinking, I was ignoring the prices. The way Dan Skelton operates is, what have we done through our entire operations existence? every season, what can we do a little bit better? What can we do a little better? And watching how the season's unfolding, you can see, even with the preparation for Grey Dawning and the thinking about what he wants to do with that horse, panic attack, etc. He seems to be trying to right the wrongs of last season in order just to be better, not just to win the championship, but just to be better.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think that's what will make the difference in the end in the Trainers' Championship.
And it's not a one-size-fits-all either. It's, particular horses like Grey Dawning was obviously prime for the Betfair Chase, and Panic Attack likewise for the Paddy Barrel Gold Cup. But other horses are coming on for their runs. Yeah. So, no, it's fascinating.
Okay. That's enough chat about that. I'm sure we'll talk more about the Trainers' Championship in time to come. Dan Skelton, though, the 1-3 favourite with Bet365 as we get ready to chat about this week's racing recap. And we start at Haydock with the Betfair Chase. And I'll start with you here, Don, with with the performance that Dan Skelton's got at a Grey Dawning. Before the race, I had the opportunity to speak to him, and he was so sure about this horse's chance, so bullish about this horse's chances. That's what really struck me about that whole day.
Yeah, and look, he was very good. And again, Harry was very good on him as well. We saw what happened last year. He got to the front, got the better of Royal Pagaille, and then made that mistake at the final fence, and he came back and got the better of him. Obviously, things are different this year. The ground wasn't as soft this year as it was last year. Royal Pagaille is a year older. He's 11. I thought he ran a hell of a race as well on ground. It was probably faster than ideal. The only 11-year-old ever to win the Betfair Chase is Kyle Star. And Royal Pagaille was bidding for an unprecedented hat-trick in the race. No horse had ever won it 3 times in a row either. So he ran a big race, but no, Grey Dawning. And, when he travelled that well down to the final fence, then it was a case of, was he going to find all of what it looked like he had? Yeah. And he did. No, it was a big performance, and propelled him high in the market as well for the bigger or the other races later in the season. Yeah,
I think Don's summary of Royal Pagaille's run as well is also really interesting, because Venetia Williams was cock-a-hoop about the performance on ground that she said would not have really suited him as well as the ground 12 months ago. Yeah, they'll be praying for soft ground for the Peter Marsh, won't they, so he can try and get another win at Haydock. Obviously, in that race, I thought he ran a stormer. It was interesting with Grey Dawning because there was a moment when you thought, oh, what have you got under the bonnet here? And in fairness, I think when Harry went for him, it'd have gone even further clear if it allowed him to. It was, unsurprisingly, he finished top on all 6 race IQ metrics, but I thought the interesting part was that the final finishing speed percentage was still only 98.49. Now, if you compare that to last year's, was 96.94. So they did still go a good gallop, and you did need to stay in those conditions in order to win that race. But I thought it was very good. To put that into context with regards to other performances at Haydock, like Cabaret de Matin was 108%, the Jukebox Man was 114%. So it wasn't the fact that all of them were tiring late on in those conditions. But yeah, I thought it was a good performance. But he will need to step up again in order to reach the Gold Cup. Okay, any interest therefore in Bet365's 14-1 Grey Dawning for the Gold Cup? Not for me. It's going to be interesting to see where he goes next, because didn't Dan Skelton say he wasn't going to go to the King George because he doesn't go right-handed? So one run, Cotswold Chase is the most likely. He half mentioned going to Ireland. Well, that's the thing. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't that be fascinating if he came over for the Savills Chase? I think it's probably unlikely, but it'd be brilliant if he brought him over. Yeah. I suppose you'd want to win the Trainers' Championship running the Cotswolds, don't you? Any interest in Grey Dawning for? No, I suppose the positives for him is that he's got form on the new course, doesn't he? He won that Grade 1 intermediate novice chase, so he's got form there. They obviously the season just went wrong, didn't it, last year after his. He didn't really want to go to the King George originally last year, did he? So yeah, he could prove a different horse. It's all about his jumping, isn't it? When he gets into that rhythm, he was making lengths at every single fence, and it was back to his best, really. But yeah, I do still think that there is a pretty big gap in order for him to be at least placed in the Gold Cup. Yeah, I'll stay with you, Steve, for the next horse we'll talk about, and it's from the 1965 chase at Ascot. The Arkle winner Jango Baie. I think he's as short as 4-1 with Bet365 for the King George. But he's, getting quotes for the Gold Cup, the Ryanair, the Champion Chase. How impressed were you by what he did on Saturday? I was impressed, but I think some people might be getting slightly too excited. I thought if you asked Nico de Boinville how you want the race ran, I think he'd have described it exactly as it happened. I mean, I didn't have Gidley Park leading Ile Francais and Pic D'Orhy on my bingo card pre-race. But yeah, I thought Jango Baie
apparently would need the run, so we'll step forward from that. I thought he jumped particularly well, and you know that he's going to stay well over that distance. Whether he's going to stay that well over 3 miles at Kempton and maybe further in the Gold Cup is obviously a question mark. But I do think Kempton will suit him, and I do think the way that the race will be run again with LA Francais in at Kempton, the jukebox man who will come on to, they're all going to be forcing that pace, so he'll get the same sort of setup in a King George. I remember sitting here after Aintree last year, and it was myself and Tom Scudamore were discussing Gidley Park, and I said, I'd love to see him back down to 2 miles over fences. And I think I might well get my wish now, because I thought he jumped really well and just didn't stay that distance, having gone that gallop early. So if they can try and restrain him a little bit further, I think they're talking about coming back for the Clarence House at Ascot, that I think will really suit Gidley Park. And I'm quite excited about him going back down to 2 miles. But yeah, Jango Baie, I think, he's definitely a contender for the King George, but I do think is slightly too short now, based that I do think this was run ideally to suit.
Okay, Jango Baie, my correction, now 3-1 with Bet365 for the King George. Gidley Park, the Queen Mother Champion Chase prize with Bet365 is currently 50-1. But a few people, like Steve, impressed with how he went through the race, and maybe he is a 2-miler. Jango Baie is now the 3rd highest rated chaser in Britain after that performance.
Yeah, I do like Jango Baie. I know, like, Victoria didn't run his race, LA Francais obviously didn't run his race, but it was the only time that dipped below racing post standard on the day. And there was a point over the last 2 fences before they turned for home where he just was coming under a little bit of a squeeze. And from that point, it was impressive the way he picked up and stayed on for an Arkle winner. I mean, I liked the Arkle that he won was remarkable. I look at it again there yesterday, coming down the hill, like he had no chance. But he still won it, although albeit helped by Major's mistake at the second last. But the Arkle is actually a good trial for the Gold Cup. Like, Kick King finished second in an Arkle, War of Attrition ran in an Arkle, Size and John was second to Duvan in an Arkle. Even Absolute Tard, he didn't run the Arkle, but he was a Fortria Chase winner before he won the Gold Cup. So to have that pace, to me, that's the pace of it. Although he only just got up to win the Arkle, his class got him to win the Arkle, and Nicky Henderson said directly afterwards he wasn't going to obviously run over 2 miles anymore. So I think he's a player all right, and he's very short for the Gold Cup though, and we'll come on to Sunday's racing now, because it's a fascinating for the King George, a fascinating King George. And, you know, the Cheltenham Vets will talk about Jango Baie, is about the Ryanair Chase. I'd like to see him in a Gold Cup. I think he could be a player in a Gold Cup.
Okay, we'll talk more about the King George in detail, but another race that you've just alluded to that had a significant bearing on the betting for the King George, and indeed for races later on this season, was the John Durkan on Sunday. Beforehand, you looked at the field, thought, this is terrific. To see all these quality horses lined up. Sadly, Nick Rocket didn't take part. But what did you think of Gaelic Warrior's victory over Factifile?
I thought this race had everything. You know, it was a deep race beforehand, 10 runners, 4 of them rated 170 or higher. And yet all the, you know, okay, some horses were coming back, having the first run of the season, including the first and second. Few horses running over a trip that was obviously short of their best, 2 miles, 3.5 furlongs. But for Paul Tannen to get out on Gaelic Warrior like that, he really set the race up, and it was fascinating. Even watching it live, Mark Walsh and Factifile stalking him in behind and trying to make his ground, trying to erode the deficit while using as little energy as he could. And then he got there, was going to win. Exactly, jumped across on over the second last. But for Gaelic Warrior to come back like that, and Paul Tannen did the same on Westport Cove, to just keep a little bit in reserve and to get him to fight back like that. Like, you know, all the metrics, the race IQ metrics were phenomenal. They're length gain jumping, Gaelic Warrior 22 length gain jumping, Factifile 21 length gain jumping, fast or slow was 10 lengths, and then everything else was in the minus figures, length gain jumping. Even that, like, they had that long break on the field from flagfall. Their final furlong was like 15.6 and 15.66, 15.68. The next fastest was 16.79, and that was after they'd expended all that energy and putting that break on their field. So the two, like Factifile, he lost so little in defeat, but I thought it was a fantastic horse race, a deep race, and the front two emerged with both reputations enhanced, I thought, yeah.
I'm going to slightly disagree here with Don. We had a pre-chat about this, and I disagree about what a great race it was, because I was so irritated watching the first 3 furlongs of the race, watching Gaelic Warrior establish a soft lead like that, you know, I was a bit annoyed that the other horses weren't put into it and given a race. But on the flip side of that, I know the way of thinking is a Gold Cup horse. He's got a long season ahead of him. Fast or Slow is coming off a long break, etc. So I take all that into account. But when I look back at the sectionals for the first 3 furlongs or the first couple of furlongs of the race, Gaelic Warrior went 3 seconds. The horses behind him, like I know the way you're thinking of Fast or Slow, were 2.5 to 3 seconds slower than Gaelic Warrior over the first 2.5 to 3 furlongs. That equates to about 10 to 12 lengths, cheaply gained. And obviously they were never going to get back into it where they're going so slowly, and he's a speedier horse than they are. So I was irritated by that aspect of the race as an analytical point of view, but take nothing away from the actual clash between Gaelic Warrior and Fat to Fire, which of course that's happened before at the races.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and it's the sort of race that you want to watch 10 seconds before they jump off at the same time, because I don't think it was designed that Paul Townend was going to make the run in. Gaelic Warrior very much made that up himself, and if you look at the individual jump index for the first 5 fences, I think Gaelic Warrior's jumping meant that he got that lead, as well as obviously being allowed to do his own thing in front, because he was 8.3, 8.5, 9.1, 9.5 and 8.3. So he's basically winged the first 5, not gone too fast in order to build up that lead. I actually thought it was a really well-judged ride by Paul Townend pace-wise, because there was only 3 furlongs where they went above 16 seconds. That was the 7th, the 11th and the 17th. And like Don touched on, the final furlong was 15.66. So it's not like it might have looked that way on the TV that they were slowing coming towards the line, but they really weren't. I thought it was fascinating to watch. After Aintree, you asked me who my Gold Cup bet would be, and it was Gaelic Warrior. But I thought it was going to be more in the design of Patrick Mullins' Aintree ride. You can't win a Gold Cup running like that. So I'll put that down to being fresh and first run of the season. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see how they ride him, hopefully in a King George. Because, whether he can do that over 3 miles is going to be the question mark from the front.
It's a running style that suits King George, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like to be up on the front end, you don't want to be too far back at Kempton. And yeah, like as you said, Steve, like I was expecting him to be held up at least behind the front rank, but I think Paul Townend just, he sensed that he wanted to go, so he let him go. And like he said, he was a passenger afterwards. I think he was a lot more than just a passenger on his back, but he kept some in reserve. But it was I thought the whole race was a fascinating race to watch and to assess. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about one more race that had a significant bearing on the King George, and that was the graduation chase at Haydock, that the jukebox man back in action after his injury issues at the end of last season, or halfway through last season. How impressed were you by the performance after that layoff?
I was really impressed. Yeah, you never know. It was obviously a good performance in the Quarto Star last year, and whenever a horse suffers an injury, you're always slightly sceptical of whether they'll reach back to that level, and I think he had bettered that today. The handicapper agrees, up 5 to 156, but that rating does still suggest that he's going to have to improve another chunk.
9 behind Jango Baie, is that
in order to get into that picture. But I heard a lot about graduation chases, and they aren't designed for these sort of horses. It's exactly the race that the jukebox man is designed for, a horse that's got injured and only had 2 runs over fences. Iroko shouldn't be running in that, but that's another topic. I thought it was a good performance. He had a jump index of 8.3. To put that into context, Grey Dawnings was 8.0 overall, so jumped really well. My only concern with him going right-handed in a King George is that if he ever corrects himself at a fence, he goes slightly left. And I did think up the run-in, he slightly hung left-handed at the same time. So whether he'll be able to cut that out at Kempton, and whether it's just a thing when going left-handed. Some horses do go left when they're going left-handed, and some horses do go right when they're going right-handed. But that would slightly be in the back of my mind going to Kempton. But I thought Connections will be thrilled, because according to Ben Pauling, he'll step forward from that run as well.
Yeah. What did you think of?
Yeah, no, I thought he was good, and exactly as you said, Rishi, coming back after a break, you're kind of not sure how they're going to perform, but he did it very well. Steve said it earlier on that the finishing speed was 114% of overall speed, so it was a slowly run race. He was allowed his own way up front, but he jumped well, he did it well. It was only his third chase as well. Like, it kind of feels like he's been around for a long time, but it was only his third ever chase, and yeah, he was just mugged in the Albert Bartlett hurdle, so he's a classy horse. He's got that win in the Caddo Star Chase over the King George course and distance. Now, the time of that race was 8.6 seconds slower than Banbridge was in winning the King George. Now, that King George was a hell of a King George, so maybe no major shame in that, given that it was only a second run over fences as well. But I think he's going to have to improve if he's going to be a King George contender.
I'll take you through the prices for the King George at Bet365. It's worth having a discussion about the race. It's not that far away. Gaelic Warrior is 11-8 favourite. Jango Baie is 3-1. Jukebox Man is 9-2. Factor File 8-1. Last year's winner Banbridge 20s. Fast or Slow 20s. Ile Francais, very disappointing I thought, at Ascot 25s. And then 33-1 bar those. You get first go, Don.
Look, there's so much in there. Like Ile Francais, he had a similarly disappointing run before. He ran a hell of a race in the King George last year, didn't he? Gaelic Warriors, like, right-handed at Punchestown, right-handed at Kempton. We know he goes a bit to his right for all that. He was so impressive when winning at Aintree. Yeah. He's still probably better going right-handed than he is going left. Jango Baie has to be in there as well, as we were discussing earlier on. And Banbridge, he's a bit of a forgotten horse in the race. Thought he was so good last year in bridging the gap between Ile Francais and himself to get up and win, and we haven't seen him since. I think he was getting an entry in the Hillyway Chase, or I think Joseph Brown said that might be where he might start off. So it's close enough to the King George, but he'd be on my mind as well. In fact, if like he was extended on the back of his John Durkin chase run. I didn't see why. Yeah, I didn't see why. So I think he's probably a little bit bigger. What's he, 6-1 or
8-1?
8, yeah, that's probably bigger than it should be as well. And Banbridge, the 20s about Banbridge is probably too big as well.
Yeah, it's just changed. No, it's still 8-1. Okay, I like Factor File. If he goes, I've been saying this is his race for a long time. What do you?
I think is that price because there is an uncertainty about him having owner. I think if it was, let's say, no runner, no bet, I think it'd probably be a 5-2 shot. So I do think you're getting that factored into that price, is that Willie Mullins is likely to split them, and he's going to need a 3-mile chaser at Christmas, isn't he? And with Galopin having a slight setback, probably going the Tremor route, I would imagine Factor File would slot in to there. I'm not inclined to have a bet in the King George at this time. I think Fast or Slow is probably the one that might be overpriced, in my opinion. I thought he ran a race full of credit. He will step forward massively from that run in the John Durkin, and I thought he was the one that actually nearly got to bridging that gap late on. I fancied him for the race last year. It's just whether he's still in the same form coming back after that year off, and we didn't really learn that on Sunday.
If those horses, or 3 of those horses that we've mentioned, 3 or 4 of them line up, it should be a very good renewal of the race, and it will be something that no doubt we'll talk more about. Let's turn our attention to some of the mares that were in action over the weekend. And at Ascot on Saturday, a filly or mare who has just kept getting better and better with every start. And it's hard to imagine because she's not that big. She doesn't look like she's that type of horse. But Wadu, I thought it was a tremendous performance because I thought she didn't look like she went through the race that well.
Yeah, I know it was a hell of a performance from a hell of a mare. Like as you say, Rishi, she just keeps on improving. Like she was so good in winning the Martin Pipe Hurdle at Cheltenham in March, and then went her only defeat over hurdles. She's won 8 of her 9 races over hurdles was to Lossima at that entry in the entry hurdles. Like what a record she has. It looks like she's probably improved again. Danny Gilligan was so good and her, just very patient in behind. Confident that he had the filly or the mare under him to go and bridge the gap, which he did, and she quickened away from her rivals. And Gordon Elliott saying that everyone's assuming the mare's hurdle is going to be the race, and then he's kind of going, well, it's the stayers hurdle an option, it has to be, and also the champion hurdle. Yes. So, but we just don't know where the ceiling of her ability is, and she's got Cheltenham Festival form as well. So no, it was a really taken performance, and you kind of hoped she would do something like that, but she did. And again, she's on the march. I think she can improve again.
Yeah, and the form of the race is really strong, Steve, considering the runner-up and who the runner-up beat at Chepstow. Yeah,
Celtic Dino obviously finishing runner-up. Alexi went up £13, I think, today for his Greatwood Hurdle victory. So yeah, the form was there. I thought she was in trouble round in the bend, but Danny Gilligan didn't think so, and she just turned into Bouvet there, jumping the last. I don't think I've...
Flew it.
if you ever want to watch a hurdler jump a hurdle efficiently, that was the one. I actually went back and looked at the Race IQ data for just that jump, and she gained 3.56 lengths over the field based there. And that's one of the ones that you can back up. You look at these, and data's quite difficult to look at and say, yes, I definitely agree with that. But she winged that last, and that won her the race. I thought it was a brilliant performance. I think with them moving the mare's hurdle to the Thursday on the new course, that will suit her perfectly as well, because she definitely stays. And I'd have been slightly worried, I think, if it was still in its old slot on the Tuesday of where they would go. I think the stayers might have come into it at that stage, but I think with them moving it to the Thursday on the new course, I think that will suit her perfectly.
9-4 with Bet365 for the mare's hurdle, 16-1 for the champion hurdle, 25-1 for the stayers. What appeals most?
I'd say the mare's hurdle is probably her race. You know, I'm sure Gordon Elliott, and like she's been a brilliant mare for the owners as well. Like they'll decide what to do, but if you're working on the premise that you go to the race that you can win at the Cheltenham Festival, then that's obviously the race for her. It's restricted to mares, and it's probably over her optimum trip, as Steve said. It's a slightly stiffer mare's hurdle this year than it was last year, than it has been. I think mare's hurdle is probably her race.
If you also look at what they've got for the stayers as well, you've got Tiupu sat in the stable at Gordon Elliott's as well as the yellow clay. Like, I'd be very surprised if she went that route, and I don't think she's fast enough for a champion hurdle.
Did we learn anything about Lossiemouth's performance in winning the Morgiana?
No, I think the fact that she ran there told a lot about Anzadam herself and the hierarchy of the 2 milers at the Willie Mullins yard. I think the fact that straight after the race, Willie Mullins said that she's not going to go to Kempton, she's going to be our horse to stay at Leopardstown, basically means that she is the number 1 for the champion hurdle within the yard. And I really hope she runs in the champion hurdle. I do think she will as well, and I think she'd have a massive chance in it.
Well, she's 3-1 favourite for the champion hurdle with Bet365.
Yeah, look, she was very good, and interesting that Paul Townend got her out in front and got her attacking her hurdles, which was good, because at Kempton in the Christmas hurdle last year, she was kind of in behind. She didn't really have a cut at some of her early hurdles, so maybe she didn't just like Kempton, and maybe that's part of the reason, or factored into the fact that Willie said she's going to stay at home at Christmas. But no, look, it's good to see her going and doing it. Glenn Killen did really well. He's a really likeable horse. He's out of a half sister to Sweet Killen for the Bows, and Harry Kelly, he kept on well, and he's been knocking on the door. Like, he was unlucky not to win a Grade 3 at Tipperary in his penultimate run. He fell at the final flight. He would have won. Then he won next time, and he wasn't within hailing distance of Lossiemouth, but it was a nice run by him to keep on to take second place, I thought.
I think it's well worth looking back at that Christmas hurdle at Kempton, because like Paul was nudging her before the first hurdle. That's not her. You look back at her runs in the Triumph hurdle or the Mare's hurdle, she's keen going to every hurdle. I just think that was a complete off day, and you just need to just take that out.
Of course, her 3 closest rivals in the market for the champion hurdle, the New Lion, Constitution Hill and Anzadam, are all due to line up in the fighting 5th, and that's a race we'll be talking about a little bit later in the show. But at this point, as we're wrapping up racing recap, is there anything else from the past week? And I'm sure there are a few that you want to mention, Don, that struck a chord that you want to follow next time or a little bit later on.
Yeah, lots and lots. Cabernet Matin was really good at Haydock. His first run for Dan Skelton, and his time was very good. He was 2.2 seconds faster than his fastest rival through the final 4 furlongs. And look, this is a race that more of that won 11 years ago off of Markov. He was rated 137 then. Cabal de Matin was rated 140, so £3 higher. Yeah. More of that went on and won the Relkeel hurdle and then won the Stairs hurdle. So I guess, and it was said afterwards, that's probably handicapped out now for Cabal de Matin. So I'm sure
he was ridden like that, wasn't he?
Yeah, they're going to have to start thinking about those kind of races. Now a Relkeel hurdle would be a good step. Oscar's brother, very good for Conor King. He's only got 2 horses in his yard. Grade 2 had won the following day, won a maiden hurdle. So what trainer's ever sent out all the horses on one weekend and won all the races? Yeah. But brilliant for him, and he's really been very good with Oscar's brother, and his brother Daniel rode him and rode the other one as well. Those 2, I thought. Caliconte was good as well. Thought she jumped well. She stayed on really strongly as well at the end of her race and her first run over fences as well. So I think she could be a better chaser than hurdler as well. But, as you say, deep weekend, lots going on.
Yeah. Anything for you, Steve?
Yeah, a couple of training performances. St Irene was the first winner for Nick Schofield over jumps. That was at Wincanton on Thursday. Freddie and Chris Gordon had an unbelievable day, didn't they? 462 to 1 treble. Yeah. They had. Electric Mason probably being the best of those, winning that stayers handicap.
He lost his claim as well, didn't he, Freddie?
Yeah.
He rode out his claim on the day.
On Electric Mason, yeah.
Yeah, so that was, yeah, I thought they were good stories. And then, yeah, Cabaret de Matin's up 14 to 154 again. I think Paul Nicholls probably watched that slightly head in hand with what Dan Skelton did that on the stable debut.
Yesterday at Kempton, a couple of performances. Sonic Pioneer in the Harry Redknapp colours, and also a mention for Jax Jr., who beat Jericho de Repene. He was behind Lump Sum, first time up, which bodes well for Lump Sum, who I have high expectations for this season, but I thought he was impressive in his own right, Jax Jr. That's it for Racing Recap. We're all done. Those are the horses that have made an impression on us over the last week or so. Before we get into our weekend preview, just to let you know that our sponsor Bet365 have a best odds guaranteed offer. It is available on every single UK and Irish race from 8 a.m. on the day of the race. If you take a price and the SP is bigger, Bet365 will pay you at the bigger odds. Full T's and C's can be found on the website. And so we go to what's coming up this weekend, and I've already alluded to it. The Fighting Fifth Hurdle at Newcastle. Although it's a small field, as it often is, it does feature 3 of the top 4 horses in the market for the Champion Hurdle. And it also features last year's winner of the Champion Hurdle, who is 25 to 1. That's Golden Ace. The favourite is Constitution Hill at 6 to 4. The New Lion is 13 to 8. Anzadam is 11 to 4. So we've got 2 Champion Hurdlers in the race and 2 pretenders in the New Lion at Anzadam. Where do you stand on the winner?
It's going to be, like, there's so many questions that are going to be answered here. Like,
by the way, sorry, Nameen Lion was supplemented for the race.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like, big questions about Constitution Hill. How's he going to be? Like, his last 3 runs have been obviously very disappointing for different reasons. So it's going to be great to see him back. The New Lion stepping into open company for the first time. He was, you can argue the best novice hurdler last season, and won that Turner's Hurdle, which was a hell of a race when the front 3 come in clear. So, and dropping down in trip as well from 2.5 miles to 2 miles and taking on Constitution Hill. And Anzadam, he's a funny story, isn't he? We were discussing this beforehand. Like, he won that race at Fairyhouse at grade 3, and the kind of talk was, you never know, he might be just on the coattails of the Champion Hurdle. A bit like Alexei this year, I think. Yeah. The great one was a handicap that he won, but he's could be on the coattails, 40 to 1 for the Champion Hurdle, fair enough. And Anzadam was around about that price after Fairyhouse last year. And then after winning a race at long odds on, he was suddenly 10, 12 to 1 for the Champion Hurdle. And that's kind of, like, we don't know any more about him than that. So it's just going to be really interesting to see where he fits in. And how do you price that up? It's very difficult to price him up, I think, against the New Lion and Constitution Hill.
Yeah, I agree. I'm fascinated. Obviously, I backed Anzadam last year for the Champion Hurdle after he won at Fairyhouse. He beat Calaconte, which was good, but then he went and beat Beacon Edge, which wasn't quite as good, but still unbeaten. I don't know where he fits in. I really don't. But what about Constitution Hill? Where do you stand on the Nicky Henderson assertions that this horse is back and ready to go? Nicola Boinville's very happy with him. Nicky Henderson's very happy with him.
I mean, I haven't had an update the last 4 hours, so I'm slightly worried about him. I mean, it'd be great to have him back. We were talking about one of the best hurdlers that we might have ever seen. But you do have to have question marks about his last 3 runs. I mean, the Cheltenham race fell when going okay. Aintree thought was in a bit of a pickle when he actually then fell, and then Punchestown just seemed completely out of love with the game. The racecourse gallops, previously we had Sagino, this time working with therapist. It was very much, I'm making sure this goes okay. I'd be against him. I found this really difficult. I tried to use some trends in order to see if it would then help me out. 8-year-olds haven't got the best record in the race. I know Not So Sleepy won it, obviously, as an elder as well. The New Lion actually comes out best with regards to trends. I think the Nemean Lion and Golden Ace probably have it to do on ratings, if I'm honest. The fact that Anzadam hasn't won a grade 1 yet holds him back with regards to trends. But that's not really his fault as well. Obviously, he had that setback, so he missed the end of the last season. But I know the yellow clay somewhat let down the form of the Turners, I suppose. It's a hard race to really read, isn't it? Because do you base it around what Final Demand has done, or do you base it around what the yellow clay has done since? If you look back through the other horses that he beat, let's say in the Challow and things, you've got horses like Final Demand, Wendigo, Regent Stroll, Calafé en Vol. Like, there are form boosts left, right and centre for this horse. And the only concern I would have had was the pace in the race, because he does still have to answer that question mark of whether he is a true 2-miler. But I'd say they are fairly happy that Kerry Lee supplemented Nemean Lion, because I imagine he's now going to be the pace angle. And I thought he might have proved vulnerable if it ended up being a bit of a crawl and sprint late on. I thought he might then actually get outpaced. But the fact that Nemean Lion has stayed 3 miles previously, I'm sure they'll probably go a good gallop in front, and I think that'll really suit the new Lion for Dan Skelton, who's, as we've said, a superb target trainer.
Until they supplemented Nemean Lion, I half thought Nico de Boinville would repeat what he did in the Christmas hurdle and send Constitution on. But given the fact that he had frailties, his jumping was an issue. Would you want to take anything on? Would you? I mean, now he's going to have to probably sit. If Nemean Lion does indeed go on, he'd have to sit in behind.
Yeah, interesting reading. Nicky Henderson, didn't he say that he asked Nico if he wanted a pacemaker, and he said no. Yeah. So to me, that suggests that's exactly what his plan definitely was, and maybe still is. And why not? You know, let him row away. I know the Newcastle finish, it's an incline from 3 furlongs out, but he was so good out on his own at Kempton, allowing him eye up his hurdles and jump away. Yeah, it wouldn't be surprising if they were to adopt those tactics again. But yeah, it'll be good to see him back. You kind of want Constitution Hill to put up a performance now, don't you?
Ultimately, it would be great if all 3 or 4, 5. But if the majority of horses in this race ran up to something like their form, because it would be disappointing if only one horse emerged miles clear, or if it was a bit of a mess again. Who's going to win?
I don't know what to do with Anzadam, so we're back around full circle. I think as things stand, the new Lion is the one who has the fewest questions to answer in my book. So
he just needs to answer whether he's speedy enough.
Yeah,
for this.
in terms of solidity. Well, also the step up. I wouldn't use the yellow clay as a stick with which to beat him either. That wasn't his running in the Lisbon and hurdle. They went too fast early on the ground, and he never looked happy. Even Gordon saying this morning, he was just never happy with him. So I wouldn't use that as a stick with which to hold back the Turner's form. So yeah, I think
the new Line.
The new Line in terms of solidity, I think the new Line.
And your new Line. Okay. I mean, like I said, I backed Anzadam at the Champion Hurdle after he won at Fairyhouse, thinking how clever I was. That all went up in smoke. So I feel I had to stick with him, because just don't know how good he is. We'll find out. Hopefully on Saturday, one way or another, a very good renewal of the Fighting Fifth. The Coral Gold Cup is obviously the big race at Newbury on Saturday, and the Bet365 market for that has joint favourites Maya Town and Resplendent Grey at 6-1, the Changing Man 9s, Highland 10s, Catate Dory 10s, Spanish Harlem for Willie Mullins 12s, Blizzard of Odds 14s, and 14-1 Inch House needs a couple to come out to get in. Panic Attack obviously 14s. What do you like here?
I've got 3 with slightly differing profiles. I think this is a belting renewal. Really good race. This is going back 10 years when you've got really exciting second season novices going in it. The first is that stereotypical second season chaser. That's O'Moore Park. Actually still a maiden over fences, but did finish 3rd behind Caldwell Potter at the Cheltenham Festival. Then finished 2nd behind Ristin the Ground, whose form has been boosted. Obviously beat Blue King Daru prior to him winning a Grade 2. Then finished 2nd behind Oscar's Brother, who again we touched on has boosted that form, winning a Grade 2 since. So I thought a mark of 141 could well underestimate him, and he's available, I think, 20s.
O'Moore Park is 20?
Yeah, so I thought that was quite a big price. Victorino, I went back and watched the race last year, just ran a remarkable race to run into 3rd, having jumped poorly and was detached at that stage. That was off a mark of 143, is £4 higher here. Now, you'll hear a lot about the form of Venetia Williams, and she hasn't had a winner other than Jello so far this season, but her 2 runners on Saturday, Aurora Pagaille and Marta Tor, I thought ran brilliant odds. They were both 2nd at double figure odds. So I thought he was quite interesting at around 16-1.
Yeah.
And then the fact that they're running Panic Attack here, Tristan Durrell would have had the choice. He's jocked up on her. She'll run here under a £4 penalty for her Paddy Power Gold Cup success. That means that she's £3 well in on official ratings. Now, she's only raced twice over fences for the Skeltons, won both of them. She won by 5 lengths and by 4 lengths. The way she stayed up on the hill in the Paddy Power Gold Cup would mean it would give you hope that she'd stay this sort of trip. And yeah, she's around 14-1. So I thought I'd probably chance the 3 of those, all with kind of differing profiles for the race.
O'Moore Park 20-1, Victorino 16-1, and Panic Attack 14-1. Those prices with Bet365. The 3 horses highlighted by Steve. Don?
Yeah, look, I agree with Steve. It's a fascinating race. Mayortown, you can see why he's favourite. He's £15 higher than he was when he won at Cheltenham, but he won by so far, and he's progressive. Of the Willie Mullins horses, depends on what he's going to run, but I think Blizzard of Oz is interesting. Like, he was just a little bit unlucky not to win a really competitive handicap chase at the Punchestown Festival, and he was just run out of it by Sea Music close home. Then he went to Wexford for his first run this year, and he beat Rocky's Diamond in an intermediate chase. Now, Rocky's Diamond wasn't great in the Florida Pearl chase, but I still think Rocky's Diamond is a talented horse who Blizzard of Oz just seemed to outpace him at Wexford on the day. Now he has to prove that he can see out this trip, but I think if he can, then he's a progressive horse who could be well handicapped. He's £6 higher in Britain now than he was in Ireland, or than he is in Ireland, so that's fine. Catate Dore, I think he's really interesting. Sam Thomas's horse, and he was well beaten in the Pertemps qualifier at Aintree on his debut this season, but that was a strangely run race. They missed the hurdles in the home straight.
I think Sam Thomas himself has said this was entirely a prep run.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and he was right there with them, actually, bypassing the second last flight. So, and obviously this has been his goal. He was so good in winning at Kempton last year, when again Kempton, it's right-handed but flat track, Newbury flat track. So he should be good on the track. He was disappointing at Cheltenham, but he's run 3 times now at Cheltenham. He's disappointed on all 3 occasions. Well, he goes well at Chepstow, which, I rightly or wrongly, I kind of think Chepstow form, it's a positive in terms of Cheltenham as well, because it's left-handed undulating, although different tracks. But I think back on a flat track, back over fence, he's got a nice weight as well. 10 stone 6. The Sam Thomas horses, they're in tremendous form. He's had 4 out of his last 12 runners have won, and he had Vincenzo as well in Celtic Dino. So they're all running well. And as you said, Richie, he's had this race in mind for Catate Dore for a while. So yeah, I think he's interesting.
Okay. I liked Doyen Chief again. I thought he could have well won at Bangor. He came to win the race, and then he made a mistake at the last. Ryder lost his irons. Deep Cave came and got him late. But I think the contest will suit him. He's only having a 7 start over fences. He's £3 well in after that run at Bangor. He's gone up to 140. He's running off 137. I like the idea that he's still an improver. And I'm hoping that the pace is strong and he can just drag himself into the race as late as possible. He got to the front too soon at Bangor. I was so irritated by that as well. Put that on the list. But I like him, so I'll take a chance with him, and he's 16-1. The biggest surprise about this race is that Steve hasn't mentioned Monty Star. Used to be one of your favourites.
I know.
Still in affection?
But sometimes you've gone off that cliff too many times. But I think the Grand National will probably be the race for him this season.
Yeah.
I thought this race last year was the time for him. I think he's £9 higher this year than what he would have been last year, and obviously just hasn't quite got the same profile as last year.
One of last year's heroes from the long distance hurdle is back, and that is Strong Leader. He is the 2-1 favourite at Bet365 for the race, which takes place on Friday at Newbury. Honesty Policy 5-2. He's got a couple of entries over the weekend, hasn't he? Imposed Toi 9-2. Take No Chances 5-1. Hewick 13-2. Doddy the Great 10s and 12s bar those. Strong Leader. This is his sort of race, isn't it? This track going this way, flat track.
Yeah, I imagine we'll see some headgear on him based on what they said after his performance last time. I'd look to take him on, though. I'm interested to see what JP runs here. I like both Honesty Policy and Imposed Toi, but for that reason, I wouldn't be having a bet before declaration time. Honesty Policy was really progressive last season. Obviously beat Regent Stroll at Aintree in the Mersey Novices Hurdle, then finished second, beaten only half a length by Jasmine Deveau on his first start over 3 miles. I thought he stayed that perfectly well. Impostoir obviously was a really impressive winner of that Pertemps qualifier, has gone up £5 to 153, so he's entitled to have a go at this sort of grade. And I just didn't think this division has too much in it, and I think it's probably one of those ones where you are looking for one of those second season novices or something coming in from those high-end handicaps in order to try and make the grade. I think Montmoral kind of made that step up last season from handicaps into this grading company, and yeah, I'd be opposing strong leader. I'd go with whatever JP declares.
Okay.
Yeah, look, Impostoir, really interesting, was so impressive the last day. And he won at this meeting last year as well. And he's on the coattails of the top-rated horses in it, and he gets weight. He gets £5, I think, from strong leaders. So yeah, he's a player if he runs. Honestly, Policy, he's in Hatton's Grace Hurdle as well. I'd say if Tiapu runs there, then Gordon might allow Honestly Policy to come over here come over here. Country, yeah, this country.
Where are you, Don?
I'd run, yeah, good question. So Steve said he was so progressive last year. He won the Mersey over 2.5. Then he ran Jasmine DeVoe to a half a length over 3 miles at Punchestown. So no question about him staying the trip. But I just think I find it hard to get away from strong leader. I thought he was beaten the last day at Weatherby. Thought Take No Chances had him beaten, but he rallied and stayed on. And Aintree, Newbury, left-handed flat track, that suits him well. Ollie Murphy horse is in tremendous form, so I think he's probably the right favourite for the race.
Yeah, I'm with you. I see Steve's point about the weakness of this division, and he's vulnerable, but these are the conditions for him. This race, this way round. You just look through his career. Some of his best performances have obviously come at tracks like Newbury and Aintree. You look at his record at Cheltenham, where he has to go up and down. He doesn't like that. I'm like that as well. Flat track bully. Okay, that's a look at the long distance hurdle. In Ireland, we should have a word about the Hatton's Grace. Obviously, we don't know how things might end up, but it looks as if, according to what Connections are saying, it's going to be Ballyburn against Tiapu. Tiapu is going for a third win in the race. He was obviously behind Lossiemouth in it last year. It's his race.
Yeah, I think it's his race. Like that'll be fascinating if Ballyburn lines up against him. That'll be worth the admission fee. Great to see Ballyburn back, and like Ballyburn, he's got questions to answer obviously as well after a season over fences. If he can be as good over hurdles as he was the season before last, or pick up the thread from that season and continue his progress into this season. So it's going to be fascinating to see him back, and 2.5 miles, good starting point for him into the season. Tiapu obviously stays further. He's a Stayers Hurdle winner, but as you say, Rishi, this is his race. He won the previous two, then got beaten by Lossiemouth last year when I fancied him. I thought he'd beat her. I was very wrong, but he's
They didn't go fast enough.
Yeah, maybe. He's top class though, and I'm sure Gordon Elliott will be prepping him to be right for this race again. I think they're going to be a bit busier with him this season. It's not going to be Hatton's Grace Hurdle straight to the Stairs. They might just allow him run a little bit more often. So this is a starting point for him, but I'm sure he'll be primed.
Okay, Tiapu. You Tiapu?
Yeah, I'd be fully in agreement. Yeah, obviously won this race 2022, 2023, and arguably came out with more credit last year in a race that wasn't run to suit by his stablemates for some reason. He finished second. Went on to finish second in the Stayers Hurdle, won at Punchestown, put that right, and yeah, I'd be against Ballyburn on his reappearance. I think, given how you've seen Gaelic Warrior run on his reappearance, I think Ballyburn's going to do the same sort of thing. He'll have his characteristically low head carriage. He'd be keen. I'd have question marks around him over this trip, really, on his reappearance. I think it's worth remembering that he was beaten by Firefox in a novice hurdle at this meeting, obviously as a novice hurdler as well. Even though this is going to be 2.5 miles, I do think this is. I just have question marks about Ballyburn on the whole, to be honest. Coming back from fences, on his reappearance, too keen. The one that I'd be fascinated to see if it actually runs is Mystical Power, because he has the kind of profile of Nichols Canyon of being a good novice hurdler, then finding 2 miles too sharp up into open company, and they chucked him into the Stayers Hurdle, and I thought he was travelling supremely well. I backed him that day, and then obviously something went amiss, jumping the third last, and was then pulled up. But I went back again and watched it last night and thought I might have just been looking at it because I'd backed him, but he was still going so well, and starting off over 2.5 miles, I think he'd be fascinating. But it's just whether I went through all the stable tours, I couldn't find out actually what the issue was why he was then pulled up. But if he was declared, that'd be interesting. But yeah, Tuipu I think will be very hard to beat.
Okay, yeah, that's 3 votes for Tuipu. We'll talk about the John Frankham Novices Chase, which takes place on Friday. Potentially a really good race. Regent Stroll's a 2-1 favourite, Bet365. Wendigo 9-4. Kingston Pride, extremely unexposed, 9-2. Steel Ally from Sam Thomas's stable, again highly regarded, 9-2. No questions asked, 11-2. Leave of Absence 12-1. King of Kingsfield has actually done okay over fences so far. It's 14-1. And Crest of Fortune, the outsider, at 16s. A lot riding on Regent Stroll for the Nichols team.
Yeah, it's a race that's obviously had brilliant winners in the past. You've got Coney Gree, Calanders Obo, Champ, the Jukebox Man. It's a really good race pointing towards Cheltenham Festival and beyond. I think this is a tough ask for Regent Stroll on debut. It's a bit different. I was keen on No Drama This End making his hurdling debut in a Grade 2. I don't think making a Grade 2 over fences is the same sort of thing, especially with some of the opposition in here. I thought the way to go would be Kingston Pride. I thought it was notable how weak he was in the market on his reappearance. Imagine that he should have stepped forward from that run. The actual form is working out quite well. It was only a 3-runner race at Perth, but the second Jet to Vegas ran a good race, finished second in the race that Lucky Place finished third in on Friday at Ascot. So the form holds up, and yeah, I thought Kingston Pride was probably the way to go at the prices.
Yeah, I think Wendigo ran really well first time up, and the forms were obviously weighed out, came out and won. Steel Ally, Sam Thomas was talking about what he might be able to do. I think there was was it Classic Maestro who came down in the race at Carlisle, but he still jumped pretty well. And then you've got Regent Stroll, who was smart over hurdles. The usual thing Paul Nicholls says, when he gets over a fence, you'll see the real horse. But there's a lot of pressure on Regent Stroll doing well in this race on Friday.
Yeah, look, it's look, he's going to be short. He's probably going to be over Bet Regent Stroll. So, if he had a big run at Aintree last season, but again, first run over fences, first run of the season, and he's going to be short, as you say, pressure on him. So, I think he's probably a horse to take on. I'm with Stephen Kingston Pride. Like even though it was only a 3-horse race on Tripoli Flyer, unseated at the third last, I thought his jumping was very good. He's rated 132 over hurdles. He's already on that run rated 140 over fences. So he's going to have to. Well, he's already outperformed his hurdles mark now over fences. So I think with that run under his belt, that'll stand him obviously. And interesting that Ollie Murphy said directly after the race, this was the race he was going to, the John Frankham Chase at Newbury. And you always kind of like when the trainer does that and then sticks to the plan, and it means that they're building up towards this race. So yeah, I think he's interesting in there.
A similar process, I think, for Jamie Snowden and Wendigo. I like what he did. I was slightly surprised with the ride he got first time up. He looks like a horse that's blessed with a lot of stamina. He doesn't do anything very quickly. Yet he ran really well at the festival where he got hampered on the bend and then he stayed on. I thought the fact that he's now had that run under his belt, he can be ridden with a little bit more confidence and try and stretch the field out. But he was my selection. But it's a really good race, the John Frankham Novices Chase on Friday at Newbury. Okay, it's time to open the floor up to anything else running in the next week or so. Don, what else might you be looking forward to?
I think the Drinmore Chase on Sunday, it's a fascinating race. It always is, and it's the kind of ideal race for staying novices. It's 2.5 miles, but similar to the John Durkin Chase, over 2.5 miles at this part of the year. It's a good competition at this stage of the year for horses who are going to step out and trip later in the season. And look, it's a race in which Gordon Elliott does really well. I think his first Grade 1 winner was Jesse's Dream in this race. And Romeo Coolio is in there. Like, he was classy novice hurdler last season, competed in all those good races, ran a massive race at Cheltenham. He was impressed when winning at Down Royal on his debut. They took half the fences out, which wasn't ideal because the fences that were there, he jumped very well. And Gordon was always saying he's a very good jumper of fences, and again, it's going to be a better chaser than hurdler, and he was a very good hurdler. So he sets the standard, but I think Gold Dancer is very interesting in there. Okay. Owen Griffin's running Old Man Dingle as well, and he deserves a shot at it. Like Owen Griffin, very good trainer, and it's going to be interesting to see how Old Man Dingle goes. But Gold Dancer, he beat Westport Cove at Galway. Now that was 2.25 miles, and up the hill, a kind of a set of circumstances that doesn't really suit Westport Cove. He's a 2-miler, pure. I thought the ground would find him out at Punchestown on Sunday. It didn't, but he won the Kilbegna Chase at Roscommon, 2 miles fast track, and he was good in winning that. But Gold Dancer outstayed him up the hill, but he jumped really well. Then he went to Tipperary and he beat Down Mexico Way, and Down Mexico Way won next time at Goran Park. He's now got a rating of 143, Henry de Bromhead's horse. So I think Gold Dancer again, stepping up a little bit in trip and on soft ground. I just think that he's not a flashy horse, but he jumps well, he stays well, and his 2 chases to date have been very, very good. So I think he could put it up to Romeo Cooley on the Dinmore.
All right. That's an interesting shout, because obviously Romeo Cooley's got such a big reputation, and clearly Gordon Elliott thinks a lot of him over fences. What else would you like to mention, Steve, this coming week?
It was only really that race, and just Don's pretty much said everything that needs to be said around the Dinmore. I just want to touch on the horses that Gordon Elliott has won the Dinmore with. You've got Jesse's Dream, Don Cossack, No More Heroes, Death Duty, Delta Work, Envoy LN, Mighty Potter, and then last year with Croke Park. So his proper novice chasers go to this race, and yeah, was a really good novice hurdler and looks every bit the chaser. Like Don said, the fences that he actually jumped, I thought he jumped particularly well, and yeah, it's one of those ones where they take the fences out where you go, actually, that would have hindered him as opposed to actually making it more likely for him to win. So he was the only one that I really had my eye on over the weekend apart from it.
Okay, I'll mention a couple of others. Sinatra, I thought he came to win his race on his comeback run, his first for Dan Skelton, and he made a little mistake at the last and then just got run out of it by a good horse of Philip Hobbs' mind. Is it Captain Hugo? I think it's Captain Hugo. I've lost the name of it now, but a Philip Hobbs horse that just saw him off. Just Enemy, who I put up as my horse to follow for the season. He's due to run in the Novices Limited Handicap Chase on Friday off a mark of 127. So we might know who my best bet of the weekend is going to be. And Kepler's Law. Now, he was beaten a mile at Bangor on his comeback run. He switched stables from Laura Morgan to Christian Williams. Obviously, the winner, Ludor, is in the same handicap hurdle on Saturday. But Kepler's Law, although he was beaten a long way and he finished 4th, there was enough promise in the run. He was an exciting horse last season. He bolted up at Leicester in a weak race, but he's definitely got lots of ability. He actually didn't run too badly at Sandown in that really competitive novices handicap hurdle that they always have towards the end of the season. He just ran out of steam, having been a bit too keen. And I just want to see what Christian was going to do. I'm not saying he's a bet, but I'm going to watch Kepler's Law. I might have a very small each-way bet on him, but I'll be watching those 3 with a bit more interest. Sinatra in the maiden hurdle on Friday, Just Enemy in the novices handicap chase on Friday, and Kepler's Law in the 2.5 mile handicap hurdle on Saturday. Okay, and that is our look ahead in general to the week to come. Before we get into our best bets of the weekend, we just want to let you know of the free-to-play 6 Horses Challenge. It's available every weekend with prize pools available for 5 and 4 correct predictions, as well as a jackpot for all 6, and T's and C's apply. So it's time for our best bets of the weekend. Don is our guest, so Don goes first.
Yeah, like I thought Catatadori was interesting in the Coral Gold Cup. He's £12 higher than he was when he won at Kempton, but he won it so much in hand. He's a lightly raced horse. I think he can allow him his run in the Pretenders Qualifier at Aintree on his debut this season. It's a race that's going to bring him forward for this race. I think the track will suit him. Sam Thomas horses are in tremendous form. So, yeah, I think he's going to be a player in the Coral Gold Cup. And, yeah, I'll stick Gold Dancer in there as well. I don't know how they're going to bet on it, or even if he's definitely going to run in the race. But I think Romeo Cooley, you have to love Romeo Cooley. He's such an exciting horse, and he could turn out to be one of the best novice chasers this season. But I think he's fashionable, and he's going to be put in at a short price. And Gold Dancer, who's just not quite as fashionable as he is, he's been kind of operating a little bit away from the limelight. He has to improve again if he's going to beat Romeo Cooley, but I think he can, and I think he might be a little bit of a price against him.
Okay. Is that the first time we've ever had 2 best bets from one person on a...
No, Gavin tried to do 3 last week.
Oh, did he? Well.
I was like, what was your best bet of the weekend? Here's 3. Oh,
okay.
In fairness, 2 of them won.
You're bringing it back down to reasonable levels.
Right.
Yeah, 2 wins.
I didn't know you weren't allowed to. Or yeah, I didn't
you
know
can have as many as you want.
It was only 1. Yeah. Oh, 2 is good. Yeah.
There are no rigid rules and regulations here. Steve?
It's going to be a short price, but I'm going to go for Tiapu in the Hatton's Grace. I'd be against Ballyburn, I think, all this season going back over hurdles, especially given how keen I think he'll be on his reappearance. And Tiapu was, before betting went down, I think just a shade of odds on. And yeah, I'd have him a lot shorter than that. Obviously won the race twice previously, was unlucky to bump into Lossiemouth in a slowly run contest last year. And we know that he's very good form fresh. So Tiapu, just a shade of odds on.
Okay, and I've already said Just Enemy, who Harry Durham has highlighted as a horse that he was desperate to keep in his yard when David Maxwell had his dispersal sale. It's not the first time that a trainer has spent a lot of money on a horse trying to keep them in the yard or indeed recruit them to the yard. That doesn't mean anything, but he's shown a lot of promise on his runs in France, and he's due to run off a mark of 127 in a novices limited handicap chase at Newbury on Friday. And if he isn't better than 127, then my goodness, what a waste that would have been. But now's the time to find out. You don't want to wait till he's gone up in the handicap and the price is gone. So Just Enemy on Friday. Don's gone for Catate Dore and Gold Dancer, and Steve going for Tuapu to win the Hatton's Grace for a third time. Out and about this week, Don, racing?
Yeah, Ferry House on Sunday, yeah. Looking forward to that lots. Yeah.
Excellent.
Dundalk tomorrow.
Living the dream.
Absolutely.
Dundalk and Ferry House, the double.
Got the double.
And Steve, are you out and about racing?
No, not this week. Having a week off, and
Nice.
we'll wait until the moustache goes, and then and then I can go back out in public again.
It's all for a good cause, though.
It is.
And that is it for this episode of Racing Weekly, brought to you by oddschecker in association with Bet365. Thank you very much to Steve and to Don for joining me on the show. As always, if you like what you've heard or seen in this or any of our previous podcasts, then leave us a very kind review on Apple Podcasts. Always enjoy the comment section on YouTube. I love the variety of opinions that we get. It's great to have variety of opinion. If we were all the same, it would be pretty boring. Next, we're going to be back. Andy Holding is going to join us. We'll be looking ahead to the Tingle Creek at Sandown. But for now, from the Racing Weekly team, bye-bye.